Everybody, all right, we're talking about being emotionally detached. This is becoming a huge issue all around the world, especially in relationships, especially in loving relationships with family, with your spouse, with your children, with your friends. People are ghosting people left and right. People are detaching all over the place. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One of them is there's a lot of psychotic woke people out there that are hard to deal with because they're so set in their ways and so set in their ideas of what the world's supposed to be, or at least complaining about the world, but not an idea what the world should look like, that they have to create so much conflict that you never know who's going to be the crazy. The other thing is we don't know what gender is anybody is because they're all over the place, and we don't know what they are as far as marriage because they're all over the place. They don't know what the hell they want. People are not set in careers because they don't know who the hell they are. And corporations are hiring people like hired guns. They don't want people to be there their whole life. They don't want to provide you insurance for the end of life. They don't want to deal with all that retirement crap. So they're basically hiring people. So you're going to go through 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs through a lifetime. So there's not a lot of commitment to be offered in this world. The other thing is, strangely, what creates a psychotic human being is the idea that we want to be loved. And the peace that comes with being loved by someone in this world who actually does love us, is committed to us, wants us to be happy, wants us to have all of the good things, accepts us unconditionally for who we are. It's so hard to find that, especially in marriage. People that are married are usually miserable because they expect to be loved unconditionally and accepted for who they are. However, these psychotic people, the way they are today, they marry to change you. They want to change you into what they want. So they're more interested in loving you to get what they want rather than loving you to give love. However, if you want to be emotionally attached, there are ways to do that. And so, what we're going to talk about is what causes emotional attachment. Why is it going around the world? Why is it such a big deal? And then, what does it take to attach? Broadly speaking, emotional attachment is the inability or the unwillingness to basically connect with others on emotional level. And emotional detachment also means that people do not engage with their feelings, which can translate into repeatedly being disconnected or disengaged from what other people are feeling. Now, what it takes to be loved is a sense of understanding who you are and making concrete decisions and even changing your mind when you don't agree with your own decisions, but being a decisive person, knowing where you want to go for dinner, for instance, knowing what you like to wear, knowing the things you like, things you're good at, things you're not good at. What you do is, and you can get way too decisive, but people that are generally decisive because they know their character, know who they are easy to love because you know what you're going to get. It's all these weird people who make decisions like a chameleon, trying to adapt to other people's needs, trying to meet other people's desires. You don't know how the hell to love them because they're always changing every day based on their insecurity and how much acceptance that they think they're going to get based on their decisions. Emotional detachment means that people don't engage with their feelings. It's similar to building a wall between yourself and the outside world and not letting it down for anybody. Emotional detachment may interfere with the person's life, impact social and emotional and even work areas. For example, a person might have a hard time creating and keeping a personal relationship, or might be challenging for them to share their feelings or emotions. And the more detached you are from other human beings, the less intuition you have, and the less you're going to get out of your life. The more pragmatic you're going to become, and the less decisions you're going to make, and the more you're going to be depressed and cope with your life because your value will be zero. Emotionally detached people have very little value in this life and can be replaced at work at any time, can be replaced in relationships, can be replaced all over the place because they have no attachment to other human beings. Memory comes from emotion. Memory comes from your emotional attachment. Memory comes from how you felt. It's not the things that happened to you. It's not the traumatic events that happened to you. It's how you felt about them that we remember. And many people want to detach from those emotional feelings. And when they do that, they detach from other human beings. So they're basically dead, walking the planet, probably living a suicidal life, like drinking, smoking, taking drugs, having affairs, being an idiot, self defeating, treating their children like shit. That's how people are that are emotionally detached because they don't care anymore. They're almost apathetic. And so, what we have to understand is emotionally detached people, if you're going to be one of those, you're worthless as tits on a bar hog. Your life is of little value because you are not resonating with your emotions. Now, some people can't resonate with their emotions because they're autistic, and there's a lot of those, and they breed all the time, even though they should not be in the gene pool, but they keep breeding and they keep getting married and they keep destroying people's lives and they keep acting like they're God and they keep doing things because it's logical, because that's not right. That's not what I meant. That's not what I said. That's not how it went. That's the autistic turds that are narcissistic in the world who always have to tell people the way things are and correct everybody because they are so correct in this world. Emotional detachment is a complex issue. For some people, being emotionally detached is a coping mechanism, a strategy that's used to protect them from stress or getting hurt. For others, it can be a reaction to trauma, abuse, unprocessed emotions, which makes a person unable to open up about their struggles. Emotional attachment can be helpful also in some situations when it's used with a clear purpose. Such as not caring if people gossip about you. It can have a negative effect if it's used too much or if it can control things. For instance, if you're unable to connect with other people or have a hard time expressing emotions, it might impact your personal relationships. For instance, the opposite of love is apathy. So when people get divorced, they are either angry because you did something stupid, or generally, what they do is divorce when they feel apathy. Apathy, once again, is when you just don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I can lose everything. I can lose kids. I can lose everything. I don't care. I just don't want to have to deal with your ugly ass anymore. I'm done with it. And that's when people get divorced. Now, that can be a very freeing thing and a very powerful thing. However, it also can be a very damaging thing because once you reach apathy, you'll sacrifice anything to get back to living. The thing is, emotional detachment can have different causes, like past neglect or trauma or mental health conditions, even medications. Here I live in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Pacific Northwest is a bunch of people from Eastern Europe, and a lot of those people are emotionally detached. They grow up, they work, they do very much survival, they make money, they do anything to make money. They function, they love their family, they're very loyal to family, they care about family, they're actually human beings with their family, but to the rest of the world, everybody is just a thing. And even in relationships, they're so emotionally detached and ruminative, meaning they think inside their brain and don't think and process with other human beings, that they have detached from the human race. And so they have kids and they treat them like little objects because they don't know how else to treat them because that's how they were raised. And so it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Past experiences like exposure to traumatic events or being treated like an object in childhood especially is associated with emotional detachment. Now, narcissists are very emotionally detached except for when they want to something. When they want something, that's when they become emotionally engaged. They're going to be very charming and very charismatic, and people are going to think they're the greatest thing on the planet. However, once you enter a relationship with them and they feel like they got you hooked and you're dependent on them because they find ways to groom you to depend on them, then they turn you into an object. Mental health conditions also create detachment. Some conditions, like bipolar disorder, depression, personality disorders, autism, post traumatic stress disorder, those things can also make you very detached from life. Can you heal them? Yes, you absolutely can heal them. For instance, one of the most effective treatments of PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, is equestrian therapy. That's developing a relationship with an unbroken horse. Horses are able to actually read your emotions. They develop a relationship with a human being based on how safe that person is emotionally. So if you're bipolar and you're psychotic, don't ride horses because you'll probably be dead because they can't stand you. However, if you're a normal human being that develops some control and self-discipline for your emotion, which people with post-traumatic stress disorder have to remedy to have a relationship with a horse, you can actually overcome your post-traumatic stress disorder because you take charge of your emotions in order to have a relationship with the horse, and the horse gives you in return what you give it back. Medications can also cause emotional detachment. It can be a side effect, like antidepressants, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, can also create psychotic disorders if they're taken to the wrong degree. And if you're going to go to a psychiatrist, there's a good chance they're going to get the a degree, the milligrams that they prescribe to you incorrect. That's why they usually prescribe the least amount. However, finding the right mix for a human being, especially when you're mixing mental health medications like mood stabilizers and antipsychotics and antidepressants, you're going to have some of those ingredients which are going to make you flat and detached. People that are overtaking medication or have the wrong mixture of medications, that can cause enormous disconnection from life. Personal choice. Some people might choose to detach emotionally as a way to cope with stress, anxiety, or boundary violations. Many people have terrible boundaries. Now, people that have healthy boundaries understand what it says when you say, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. That's healthy boundaries. However, the people that are all yes or no's are scared to create boundaries, or if they overdo it because their ego is so huge, they like to say yes and no, especially no to most people, especially people that are control freaks and narcissistic in marriage. They love to say no to just about everything that doesn't meet their approval. But, if you want to be miserably married to a human being, marry a narcissist and see what life will be like. Or if you really want to have a psychotic marriage, marry a borderline personality disorder who is psychotic on every given moment of life, and you will be miserable because they love conflict all day long, every day of your life. They love to be right about everything, even if it destroys a relationship with another human being. They don't care. They are a wrecking ball because they have to be right. So some people show difficulty showing empathy to others. Now, people like a borderline personality use empathy to entrap you, and then they turn on you like a rattlesnake. Also, difficulty sharing emotions, opening up to others is another emotional detachment. Difficulty committing to a relationship or a person. If you're going to be in love, the depth of your love is going to be reflected by the depth of your commitment to another human being. So, for instance, if you get a puppy, you commit to the puppy, you deal with the puppy chewing everything, pooping everywhere, peeing everywhere, destroying your backyard, sleeping where it's not, being around you at inconvenient times, all the stuff, you're committed to it. You're going to keep this puppy no matter what. That commitment develops a love that is almost unconditional because you learn to take care of that puppy. You learn when it needs to be fed. You learn how to train it. You learn how it learns how to train you. You both develop a wonderful relationship. But people don't do that for each other. They don't commit. They half-ass commit because they look at, well, what am I going to get out of you? What are you going to give me in return? People love to bargain for love. You can't bargain for love. Love is a commitment. That's what it is. You're either all in or you're all out if you're going to be married, especially in a covenant. If you're going to have a covenant, which means you care about God. But if you don't care about God, you're going to have a hell of a time being committed. You're going to be half-ass committed, which as a therapist, I call that job security. A lot of people try to be in a relationship. I try, but that person made me mad today and that person did this and I threw divorce at him 8,000 times. Those people are psychotic. I love those people. They create job for me all day long, every day of their life. I want a divorce. You are not meeting my needs. I am not happy. I am this. I am that. It must be my way. My expectations must be met. If you're going to be one of those psychotic people, you are ripe to have a very good therapist in your life. And that's a wonderful thing because that therapist will work with you forever and ever and ever. And you probably, if you're too narcissistic, will never fess up to the fact that you're accountable for your own stupidity. Inability to identify emotions. In a romantic relationship, some of the emotional detachment signs includes the following: not being able. Your partner might not answer the bids for connection. Some people are so emotionally detached that you keep asking for $50 and all they have is five. And if you can't make peace with the fact that all they have is five and you keep wanting 50 from them, you're going to have a miserable life. You have to recognize people's limitations and take them where they are and then invite them to be a better person. There's also poor communication. Communication is what it takes to have a relationship. If you're a poor communicator, shut the hell up and don't be in a relationship. Close yourself up in a room, work behind a computer, gain 500 pounds, eat your crackers and all your sandwiches and your fast food and your McDonald's, and just sit there and leave other people alone. If you can't communicate and you don't want to communicate, don't be in a relationship and put your pecker back in your pants and your vagina because you should not be breeding. Communication is what it takes to live. Not all communication is verbal. 70% of all communication is meta communication, which is nonverbal. For instance, a hug, a touch on the back, a kiss on the forehead is 10,000 times greater than an I love you because it means that you're showing that you love a person because your actions are more important than your words. There's also a reduced affection. There are many ways to show affection. However, what people do is they develop resentment. Where does resentment come from? It comes from your stupid expectations. So if you think you're God and everybody's not meeting your expectations, including yourself, did you wash the dishes? You didn't clean the house. I didn't have any food when I got home. You didn't do these chores. You didn't do this for me. You didn't do what I wanted you to do. You did. So I'm going to punish you and I'm never going to have sex with you. We're just going to lay there like a lump of crap for the rest of our lives. 30, 35 years. We'll never have sex. I don't want to kiss you. I don't want to be around you, but I'll put up with you because you have income and you take care of things around here. And I guess that's enough for me to just survive. A lot of people do that crap. But the bottom line is reduced affection is called resentment. Resentment comes from expectations. Human beings do not operate off expectations, they rebel against them. You have to operate off preferences. Preferences requires communication. I prefer you treated me like this. I prefer you talk to me like this. I prefer we went here instead of there. Now you're giving people an opportunity to love you by teaching them how to love you rather than shoving it down their throat. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back, talk more about this thing called emotional detachment. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about emotionally detached people. How to be emotionally attached. There are some examples that I can lead you through. You build a support system. On your path to understanding, you want to surround yourself with people who make you feel better about yourself. You want to be surrounded by people who offer you something to make you strive for, people you look up to, people that have qualities that you wish you had. You want to be surrounded by people that add to your life. If you have people in your life that just demand crap from you because they're worthless and they don't have any direction and they just are unhappy perpetually and they want you to fill their gap, those are not good people. Those are toxic people. And all they want to do is take, take, take. And if you want to call yourself, I'm just a giver, I love to give, that's who I am, I'm a giver. Well, that means you're going to be a miserable human being because givers will give everything away and never get anything in return. If you're going to call yourself a giver, you're a fool. You need to have boundaries. You need to think in terms of what you have to give and what you don't. And that makes you emotionally attached because that means you care about people. When you create boundaries, you care about your relationships because you want them to be quality. So, building a support system has many mental and physical health benefits. It can be invaluable because these people have a thing called empathy. They care about you and you care about them, and they show up when you don't ask them, and they show up when you need them, and you show up when they need you. And you recognize each other's needs and you care about each other, and you stay in communication, and you do a thing that all of us crave in this life, which is to receive and to give understanding, which requires you to be a listener. That's why I say people that, "Oh, I'm a terrible communicator." Well, you're a lazy piece of crap. If you're a terrible communicator, learn how to communicate because you have no business putting yourself into other people's lives and making them miserable because you're a lazy piece of crap. So, if you're going to have relationships, you need to grow up and communicate, care about other people. That's emotional attachment. Care about understanding that you are different than me and I am different than you. And I respect who you are for who you are. And I'm not trying to change you. I love you unconditionally for who you are. That is what it takes to love. That's what it takes to celebrate our differences. That's what it takes to know that people are more good than they are bad. And when you attach to a person, you attach to their goodness and you set boundaries around their badness because all of us have good and bad. You also want to practice mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is an ancient practice called prayer. Prayer often offers us the ability to hear and see what our mind is thinking and to witness what our mind is thinking so that we can be more objective and understanding and we can be more productive and care about our relationships. Your sole purpose on this life is to have compassion for other people. Your purpose on this planet is not about you, it is about others. It is always about others. Your meaning of your life is what you care about, what you are good at, what you do hard to make your life easier, what people pursue you for because you are good at it. And those are the things that give us the place, the intersection with other humans. Knowing what your meaning is, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not good at, knowing what you've spent time learning about that they haven't. That is what our life is about, is giving away what our meaning is, what we are good at. We also had to practice being emotionally vulnerable, which means that we completely accept who we are. We completely accept ourselves. And that unconditional self-regard, that unconditional self-acceptance allows us to say, hey, I'm good at this and I'm not. I'm this way and I'm not. Sometimes I'm moody, sometimes I'm foul-tempered, sometimes I'm intellectual, sometimes I offer insight, sometimes I'm very quiet. And that's all who I am. And I'm more than welcome to communicate that to you at any time if you're more welcome to receive it. So, emotionally vulnerable people are introspective and understand how they can affect other people's lives. People that are not emotionally vulnerable, the people that are detached, have no idea what the impact they have on other people. They're like a freaking wrecking ball. They're like a speeding person on a freeway who doesn't care how many people have to pull aside because of their idiocy, because how stupid they are. They're like drunks. They just care less. People that are emotionally attached, if you're going to be in this life, you are criminal. You are a violator. You are a human being taking up space and you are hurting other people because of your emotional detachment. We owe it to each other to have relationships, to care about each other. Now, if you're autistic, you're going to have to manufacture that. You're going to have to go, oh, you appear to be mad at me. I wonder why they're mad at me. Oh, they're mad at me because I did this. That means you have insight. That doesn't mean you're going to understand how they feel emotionally. You're not, but you do have accountability for how you come across and registering that and putting a checklist together that when people do this, I probably need to do that so that you can interact with other human beings. Now, Autistic people generally could care less about other people. However, they love people, especially when they give them something. But most autistic people love themselves more than anybody on the world, and they think the planet should just be wiping their ass on a daily basis. That doesn't mean they're evil. That doesn't mean they're bad. What it does mean is that they're selfish and they're detached from other human beings. But some of these people have to breed because they're lonely. I'd say go get a dog, but don't breed with it. But the bottom line is they end up breeding, they end up having a relationship, and then they don't even know that they're autistic. And what they do is they destroy another human being's life because they have no emotional attachment. They have no business being in a relationship like that, but they do it anyway. So if you're going to do it, you better do the work. And that means you need to learn how to care about other people and and learn what emotional cues are, because that's what it takes to have a relationship. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a relationship. Maybe you can, but both of you, if you're going to enter in a relationship, have to recognize that there is a deficit there. Seeking professional help is asking for help. It doesn't mean you're weak. If your emotional detachment, it's going to affect your life. If you want to be in touch with your emotions, you're going to have to learn how to understand others and how to have empathy and compassion. That's what it takes. You have a soul. Your soul has compassion. Your soul is filled with empathy. You just have to learn how to tap into that. That's, if you're a human being, that is your responsibility, because that's where we have universal pain. That's where we have universal understanding, because all of us have a soul and our soul suffers in this life. And that suffering is what all of us have in common. And that's where we have to read each other and understand where each other suffers. Emotional detachment describes when you and others disengage or disconnect from other people's emotions. It may stem from unwillingness or inability to connect with other people. So, if you're going to be married and emotionally detached to your spouse, you're an immature piece of crap. You have a covenant with this human being. You better learn to understand them, and you better learn to understand that they are different than you, and stop applying your rules to them and try to get to know them for the human being they are, and respect that they are very different from you and have a lot of good that you're not tapping into because you're too selfish. So, emotionally detached people, when they're married, you are demonstrating to your children how to be in an unhealthy marriage. Your children learn from you how to be married. These emotionally detached idiots that breed and create families are idiots. They're destructive. They're horrible people because they're emotionally detached and they haven't invested in what they've created. And so, if you're going to have children in your life, you better learn how to be emotionally attached. And if you can't do it by yourself because you're too proud and you have to be right and you think you're the greatest thing on the planet, shut the hell up, go to a therapist and learn how to attach. You need to learn it because you have a family and you don't want your kids marrying another person like you, because they will be miserable just like your spouse. There are two general types. In some cases, they develop emotional detachment as a response to a difficult or stressful situation. In other cases, it may result from underlying psychological conditions. But what we really have to understand is, if you over intellectualize trauma, you really don't understand trauma. So, how you feel about something that you remember is more important than the memory itself. The emotion that you have attached to the memory is what you have to deal with when you're in therapy. When you're trying to overcome emotional detachment, you have to understand if there's events in your life that have created negativity and a detachment from other human beings, you're going to have to dive back into the emotional event that happened and how those emotions affect you and how they continue to be manufactured across the board to anybody that rubs against those memories. Emotional detachment can be helpful if you use it purposefully. So, such as setting boundaries with certain people or certain groups. Boundaries help you maintain a healthy distance from people who demand much of your emotional attention. But let's go back to trauma. So, for instance, if you have parents and your parents argue, or your parents treat you like crap, or your parents over discipline you, or your parents are over involved in your life, or you have these wokey over helicopter parents that we have all over the human race these days. The bottom line is that you have to understand that underneath this is trauma. There is a lot of feelings that you have about people that are overly controlling, overly emotional, overly abusive, narcissistic. And then you marry somebody and they start doing something selfish. And then you start attributing them to your parent because your parent betrayed you because they are selfish and narcissistic. They betrayed you. They were supposed to be a parent. They were supposed to love you unconditionally, but they didn't. They treated you like crap. So now, if someone else that you're trying to love treats you like crap in one way or another, you're going to treat them just like your parent. And you're going to give them a double dose of what you didn't give your parent because your parent, you needed them. But the spouse or the other person, I don't need you. So I'm going to treat you like crap. I'm going to treat you like I wanted to treat that person that abused me. You see, and that's called projecting. It's a very terrible thing, but a lot of people emotionally detach from people because they remind them of their trauma. If you don't heal the trauma, you're not going to have good, steady emotional relationships. Emotional detachment can also be harmful when you can't control it. You may feel numb or muted, and this is known as emotional blunting. It's a typical symptom or issue that you should consider working with a professional, mental health professional. Now, a lot of people go into emotional bluntness or emotional detachment because of grieving. They grieve a loss. They grieve something that meant a lot to them. You know, if you lose a parent that loved you unconditionally, that is something extremely valuable. If you lost your mother and she loved you no matter how many mistakes you made, if you lost your father who loved you no matter what kind of terrible things happened, that is a person that you will grieve because they loved you unconditionally. To gain another person in your life, especially if you married a turd who has no real emotional attachment, who's selfish and messed up and mentally ill and doesn't care to fix it, or an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever crap they are, and you're just sitting there because you're dependent on them emotionally or physically or financially, whatever excuse you've given yourself. The bottom line is that you are in a life where you won't be loved. You won't be loved unconditionally because you married a turd who is incapable of it. But if you demand that they love you unconditionally, now you've got a change that possibly could happen. But that takes counseling and objectivity. People who are emotionally detached or removed may experience symptoms. And these symptoms is like difficulty creating or maintaining personal relationships. Or I'm an introvert. That's an excuse. A lack of attention or appearing preoccupied when others are around. Difficulty being loving or affectionate with a family member. Avoiding people, activities, places because they're associated with past trauma, reducing availability to express emotion, difficulty empathizing with other people's feelings, not easily sharing emotions or feelings, difficulty committing to other people or a relationship, not making another person a priority when they should be. Think about this. If you had a child and you treated that child like crap and then you die, you get into the death spiral, and all of a sudden before you are all of the opportunities that you had to engage in this child's life emotionally, the millions of opportunities you had to have empathy for them, to care for them when they needed you, when they were deeply lonely, when they were crying in their room by themselves because you were an asshole. These things is where you need to tap into. You need to know how you have affected other people. If you want that, then you will have the epiphany to change. If you don't face how you have hurt other people and care about and understand what you've done to another human being, you have no business being in a relationship because you are a wrecking ball. If you're going to live a human life of any meaning, you better get back in touch with your emotions. That is empathy, and you can fake it till you make it. That means you can act like you care even when you don't care. And you know what? You may need to do that for years because some people see no value in it, but they know they're supposed to do it. Well, do it anyway. Do it anyway because it makes you a better person, and maybe you will have an impact on another human being, even though you didn't feel it whatsoever. Try to do good. That is what we are here for, to do good, not to sit around waiting for the world to throw itself on the hood of your car and beg you to take it back. You are not that valuable. You are not that important. None of us are that important. We need to understand that your value will be defined by your investment in this life. Identifying emotional detachment is also important. People that feel empty, people that don't enjoy activities, being less involved in relationships, showing little or no empathy towards others, being harsh or unkind to other people. These are important ingredients that mean that something is way out of balance. Something is not good. You have to care to fix these problems if you want your life to be of substance. Now, if you want to die and everybody to forget you ever existed, which a lot of people do, because a lot of people live suicidal lives, it means they like to drink, they like to smoke, they like to do stupid things, they like to not take care of their diabetes, not take care of themselves. They treat themselves like crap, and then they're going to die someday, but nobody knows when, but everybody knows they're going to die, and they don't even create a will because they're too selfish. But what they do is they live a destructive, horrible life until they finally croak off. And when they do, everybody's glad they're gone. And the only thing they remember is how stupid they were. So if you want to be one of those, you're a dime a dozen. There's lots of those out there. If you want to be a real human being, you better get over yourself, get over your coping, and decide to live. And to live means you better plug in and care about other people and have something worthy to give other people that you've worked hard for that will help other people's lives. One of them is called compassion. Anybody can give compassion, even a jerk can give compassion. And if you can plug in on that one, you might have some value in this existence. Emotional detachment may develop due to a variety of potential causes. Constant exposure to unpleasant news. People love to read the news, especially these psychotic woke people who have no solutions and no creativity and no brain whatsoever and love to burn up Teslas. The wokies are psychotic. We need to understand they love the news and they love to make news because they love to be psychotic and make sure everybody sees how psychotic they are. And unfortunately, there's a good 25% of our population that likes to vote for these assholes. But unfortunately, there's another 75% that are passive and sit around and go, oh, yeah, they're kind of crazy. No, you need to vote their ass out of office. There's also people that have traumatic experiences. There's also abuse. There's also side effects of medications. There's also conditioning as a child called grooming, where narcissistic and borderline parents turn you into their selfish little object to cater to their egos. What causes emotional detachment? It may be voluntary. Some people choose to remain emotionally removed from people or a situation just because I don't like conflict. I don't like drama. I don't want to cause conflict. Well, conflict is what it takes to have a relationship. One person is different than you. They have different situations. They have different points of view. They have a different life. They have different things that they care about, you know? And if they're different, there's going to be conflict because you like things one way, they like things another way. What you want is two people that know what they like and then they know how to compromise. If you're a weasel and you just sit around with no decisions, you're probably a pain in the ass and very hard to be in a relationship with because you're a weasel. All right, we're going to take another break. We'll come right back and talk more about emotional detachment. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about emotional detachment. Now, emotionally detached people are also generally passive aggressive. So, what is passive aggressive? Well, it's a simple thing. It's like a teapot that heats up to a boil and then the teapot blows. All right. So people that are passive aggressive love to do the silent treatment for 5 days or do the explosion that everybody thinks they're psychotic. They're really generally, I thought you were a really nice person and then you got, oh my God, you act like you're crazy. That's because passive aggressive people store up disrespect over and over and over and over again. They hate conflict. They are just wieners in this life. They have no adult qualities. So what they do is they avoid conflict, avoid conflict, avoid conflict, and then all of a sudden They blow up and act like they're psychotic. And the reason they do that is because they finally reach their boiling point of disrespect, how they view disrespect. They act like a massive psychopath. And when they do that, what they're trying to tell everybody is, I hate conflict so bad. I'm going to make this such a miserable experience and such a psychotic experience. I'm going to scare the hell out of everybody. And I'm going to act like this so badly that everybody's going to go, wow, I don't ever want to cross that person again. And so what they do is they're setting a boundary so hard and so psychotic that all a person that receives it can do is go, man, dude, you need a therapist. And you do, because you are passive aggressive. Passive aggressive people don't express their emotions. If you learn how to let the steam out, vent, and let people know you're venting and you don't want a solution, then you're going to not be passive aggressive. When you teach people preferences, I'd prefer you didn't talk to me like that. Prefer you didn't disrespect me. I prefer we went here instead of there. Now you're a person that is sharing your emotions, and you're likely not to be passive aggressive. But passive aggressive people are such a weird people because all they do is stuff it and stuff it and stuff it and stuff it, because I just can't do conflict. This other person, they, especially passive aggressive people, they love to marry narcissists and borderlines, because the narcissists and borderlines have to be right about everything. They're the smartest people in the world. They think they're the greatest thing known to humanity, even though they're worthless as can be. However, since they're all ego and no person, they groom the passive aggressive person to do everything that they want the way they want it, and the passive aggressive person, because they don't like conflict, will do everything that they do want, but just to avoid conflict, even though they know it's wrong. They'll even kill somebody. They'll even put the dog to sleep if they have to, just to avoid conflict. They will do anything to avoid conflict, and doing that, they resent the hell out of that person they're married to. So every once in a while, a passive aggressive person will pop up and act psychotic to a narcissist, and then the narcissist goes, oh, you need a therapist. You are so wrong. You are so crazy. And this is evidence that you are not a good person. You are exactly the way I've labeled you the whole marriage, because you finally actually set a boundary. Even though it was a psychotic boundary, you set a boundary, and that boundary is bad because of the way you did it. So narcissists love passive aggressive people because they blow up, they look psychotic, they never get their point across, and this passive aggressive person just hunkers down and puts up with more and more and more and more until they finally can't stand it anymore. Sometimes emotional detachment may result from traumatic events like childhood abuse or neglect. Children who live through abuse or neglect, may develop emotional detachment as a means to survival. So they just detach from everything. And the reason they do that is, if I care about a toy, you're going to take it away. If I care about my phone, you're going to take it away. If I care about a person, you're going to take them away. If I care about anything, you're going to take it away from me. Because narcissistic, crazy breeding stock parents do that. They take away everything a child's life is, because all they want to do is punish them and groom them to be what they want them to be. Someday, hopefully, our society will get out of this narcissistic cycle and move into loving other people for who they are, and unconditionally accepting our children and celebrating their strengths and celebrating their weaknesses and helping them grow up into a great human being and helping them learn how to be self-substantial rather than control them in everything that they do. There's other conditions. Emotional detachment or numbing is frequently a symptom of other conditions. You may feel distance from your emotions at times when you have post-traumatic stress. Like if you were in battle and something happened where people were killed, and then suddenly you go into a Walmart where you're an open target for psychotic people and you have no idea who's going to kill you, and all of a sudden you have post-traumatic stress disorder because you're walking through Walmart thinking you're in a battle zone. Some people have bipolar. Well, the thing is, when people feel vulnerable, when people feel like their life is out of control, they become a brainstem. Brainstem thinking is all about fear, fight or flight. That is your brainstem. So when people feel that their life is out of control, they're going to be psychotic. That is because they're afraid. So when people say, oh, I'm just a worrier, well, if you're a worrier, you're a brainstem. You live in your brainstem. fight or flight. You don't use your prefrontal cortex unless you feel safe. That is what we do as human beings. So if you're going to walk through life not feeling safe, you're not going to be a very smart person and you're not going to have a lot to give other people. You may be pretty good, you may be pretty average, but you're not going to be on the high end of performance because you're a warrior. So you live in hypothesis and then you create how I'm going to solve the hypothesis. So, we're going to lose this game. We're going to, my kid's not going to do their homework. This person that I don't trust is going to run into my car. The person's going to burn up my Tesla. Whatever. If you're going to live in fear, you're going to be a brainstem. If you want to be a brainstem, you're like a lizard. You're just going through life like a lizard. If you want to be a lizard, have anxiety, have panic attacks, have all of that because you're a worrier and you want to control everything. And so, since you want to control everything, you hypothesize results of bad things that are going to happen. And then you create what you're going to do to prevent that until you finally live a life where you make no decisions and you live in all of your hypothesis. So, brainstem people with anxiety are brainstems. And if you're going to be around a person that says, I'm just a worrier, well, you're with a person that is handicapped and limited because they can't get out of their brainstem. So if we're going to live that way, if we're going to live with people that call themselves a warrior and never want to do anything about it, or I'm just take medication. Well, take medication, but what it takes is the acceptance that life is a faith-based venture. You take leaps of faith. You calculate decisions. You take a chance. You go to the grocery. You get married. You get a new job. You move to a new city. You do new things. And guess what? You learn from it. It's called experiential learning. That is how we learn in life. Experiential learning. It takes leaps of faith. People that are not afraid of that and have a positive result in their mind that they're going for are going to have a much better life because they know how to get to their goal and they know the decisions they have to make to get to their goal and they know the kind of people that they need to meet their goal. Worriers are all over the place. They're like a shotgun. They just spread their worry all over the human race and infect everything around them because all they do is worry. If you're going to live your life as a worrier, you're already dead. Contrary to popular belief, people living with autism spectrum disorder are not necessarily cut from their own emotions or emotions from others. They have emotions. They do care about people. They do care about love. They can be very loving people. The problem is it's a spectrum. So that means there's all kind you're on different moons at different distances from Saturn or Jupiter. You're in different orbits, and so autism has different orbits of autism. The people that are on the way out on the far ends of the spectrum are people that act and seem to be normal, but have some detachment from other people, especially when they're overwhelmed. So, people with autism, especially when they're overwhelmed, have a tendency to easily detach from their emotions. So, what you want to do if you're autistic is you want to understand how to take cues from other people as how they need you to respond to them. So, if you love other people, you learn how to respond to them in the way they need you to. You may not feel it, but you need to learn how to respond. That is your job. If you're autistic, if you want to overcome it, you have to learn cues as to what behavior is appropriate and what is not. If you're going to raise children because you have to put your pecker in somebody or put your vagina out there and poop out a kid, then you're going to have to deal with the fact that they are emotional. They need your emotional support, and you're going to have to learn how to support them, whether you feel it or not. Who cares about your stupid feelings? Care about the other person that you created on this planet, care about your child, and figure out how to love them the way they need to be loved. That's your job. If you did all that, take accountability and do it. Don't just sit around and make them meet you at your needs. But that's what a lot of lazy autistic people do because they don't get the diagnosis. They don't understand they have it, and they torture people through their whole lives because they're so egotistical they can't even face the fact that they might have something that hurts other people's lives. There is treatment for emotional detachment, but it depends on the reason it's occurring. And it's really important for a healthcare professional to experience problems of understanding how you have arrived at emotional detachment. And these conditions might include depression, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, or autism. For instance, if you're married to an autistic person and you keep going, they're so selfish. They don't care about me whatsoever. They stand up for their mother all the time. They don't care how they feel about me. They don't care about my feelings because they're married to me. So they since they don't care about their own feelings, they don't care about my feelings. So when you're married to an autistic person, generally they don't care about your feelings or their feelings. They just say, "Oh, well, that person is this way because of that." So they make excuses about everything, including their mother and their dad and their brothers and anybody that showed some affection for their life. They make excuses for all of them, but they don't make excuses for their spouse because they internalize their spouse. Autistic people look at you as autistic too. So why would you care? I never cared. And that's how they are because they're very selfish. I never cared about that, so why would you? So they personalize everything as if you feel the way they feel. And so when people are married to autistic people, they treat you like you're autistic and you shouldn't feel anything either. And that is a very frustrating place to live. For some people, emotional distance isn't problematic. In that case, you may not need to seek any treatment. However, if problems with feeling or expressing emotions have caused pervasive issues in your personal life, you may want to seek treatment. It's very important to be understanding of yourself that you may have a deficit that is affecting you and everyone you love, and you want to face that. Emotional attachment occurs when people willingly or unwillingly turn off their connection with their emotions. And this may be intentional. It's a defense mechanism on emotionally draining people. If you're going to be around whining people, whiners want sympathy. What you want to give is empathy. So if you're around a bunch of people and you're a sympathetic person, the whiners will suck the soul straight out of your body because what they want you to do is validate their misery. I'm such a miserable man. That person treated me so, because they love their victim themes. That person treated me so bad. Oh, I'm so sorry. That must be awful. I'm so sorry. That's sympathy. Sympathy sucks because you have to vest all the stupid emotion and it doesn't help anybody. Empathy is, yeah, that must suck that you feel that way. That person's behavior must be awful. Have you ever thought about doing this and doing that? Have you ever thought about this? Is there something I could do to help you here to make this better? Okay, that's empathy. Empathy is way different than sympathy. Sympathy are these people who are immature, conflict avoidant people who just sit there and let you whine until you've sucked the soul straight out of their body. And everybody is draining to them, including their narcissistic person that they married or the borderline that they married who wants all the attention. The borderline who likes to drink and smoke and do all kinds of crazy things, have affairs, do crazy, have people in threesomes and all kinds of. These borderlines are batshit crazy because they don't know what the hell they want. It all started in their childhood. They had way too much freedom in their childhood, and that's how the narcissist starts. You need to know when you're married to somebody like that, and you need to know whether they're capable of being married to you and whether you deserve to be married to these jerks. If you have difficulty processing emotion, by the way, because they think they're right about everything because they made a lot of adult decisions when they were younger, so they think they know everything about life, and all adults are stupid because they had to do it when they were a kid. But the problem is they did it when they were a kid. They made decisions when they were a kid, and that's why they're psychotic because they made young adult decisions and never changed them. If you can offer support and treatment and people want treatment, that is a sign of a human being who has empathy and wants to have a better impact on the other people in their life because they care about how they're hurting others. As human beings, we experience different degrees of sentimentality. Most of us can think of someone that we consider overly emotional, as well as someone who's just isn't emotional. And there is a balance. And there's a balance because we have to understand what boundaries are all about. Boundaries are critical. What I can give you, what I can't give you, what I can do for you, what I can't do for you. It's a good parent, it's a good spouse, it's a good employee, it's a good human being that sets boundaries because they're setting a person's expectations of what you can and cannot do. That's where trust is delivered. People that say yes and then don't do it are liars. If you're going to have a relationship with another human being, you have to be able to trust them. The depth of your trust is going to dictate the depth of your relationship. The depth of how you understand trust and how you care about your integrity is going to dictate how well your emotions operate in a relationship. So, people that attack trust in a relationship, people that violate trust, people that do white lies all the time, are people who don't value trust. They're going to rip the cover off the book, and eventually all the pages are going to spread, and you're not going to have a story or a relationship with that person in your life. Because if you don't value trust, you have no business being in a relationship. All right. That's our show. Thanks for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage, voiceamerica.com, the empowerment and the health and wellness channels, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. We are now on a link called Libsyn, Libsyn, and .com, and that's where our webpage is currently. We're going to be going back out nationally in April with the podcast. So I apologize, but there's been a change in ownership, which has caused a change in how much exposure this podcast is currently getting. Remember, detachment means giving up on outcomes. Nothing ever should own you. Also, be deeply involved, not entangled. And a burning passion with absolute detachment is the remedy for all great solutions. Thanks for listening, everybody.